Continuing with politics now, President Donald Trump telling ABC News earlier today that torture absolutely works and that the U.S. should, quote, fight fire with fire against terrorists.
I have spoken as recently as 24 hours ago with people at the highest level of intelligence, and I asked them the question, does it work? Does torture work? And the answer was yes. Absolutely. I want to do everything within the bounds of what you're allowed to do legally. But do I feel it works? Absolutely, I feel it works.
Now, the president added that he will rely upon the counsel of CIA Director Mike Pompeo and Secretary of Defense General James Mattis. Mattis has said torture does not work. Joining me now is Republican Senator Dr. Rand Paul of Kentucky. Senator Paul, thanks for being here. What's your reaction to what the president had to say about torture?
You know, I was comforted about a month ago when I heard that he'd had a conversation with General Mattis, who unequivocally has said that torture doesn't work. But we've also studied this. The CIA detained 119 people, 39 of them were tortured, and the conclusion of the Senate committee's report was that it didn't work. But there was also something very alarming. Of the 119 people that the CIA detained around the world, 26 of them were mistakenly identified, sometimes with people who had similar names, but they detained the wrong people. I think most Americans would be alarmed if 22% of the people we picked up and tortured were the wrong people. So, yeah, I think there's a real problem, one, whether it works or not, but two, if we get the wrong people, there's no due process, there's no sort of time to say, well, let's have a trial to find out who we have here. So, yeah, I'm alarmed by anybody that wants to go back to torture. The people in the Senate who have been tortured, mainly John McCain, don't think torture is a good idea also. It's currently against the law, and I hope it will remain against the law.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you voted against CIA Director Pompeo because he left the door open to using what is called enhanced interrogation techniques.
That, as well as that I think the CIA needs more oversight. Our intelligence community has very little oversight. There's only 8 members of Congress that truly know what's going on in the CIA, that truly know what's going on as far as covert war around the world. And I really think that war, really, unless there's an extraordinary exception, should be fought with the approval of the Congress and the approval of the American people. That's what our founding fathers thought. They took that power away from the president and they gave it to Congress. They specifically precluded the president from going to war without the approval of Congress.
President Trump is expected to announce some new restrictions on refugees and immigrants with visas from countries that include Iraq, Iran, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, and Libya. You offered similar legislation that was rejected by the Senate in 2015. The effort, obviously, is to keep out Islamic extremists. But how do you respond to those who say that this legislation will also keep out victims of Islamic extremists, Yazidis, Christians, Muslims who have been terrorized by terrorist groups, including children? What's your response to that criticism?
I think that our national defense does begin with protecting the border, not only against just sort of migrants walking across the border that might be dangerous, but also those who are coming as refugees. And one of the things about, you know, the Statue of Liberty and the mottos is bring us your poor and your huddled masses. When my grandparents and great-grandparents came to this country, you had to have a sponsor and you had to work. Many of the people we bring in now, we immediately put in government housing, and really work is not the first order of business. So I think if we are able to vet people and know that they're safe to come into the country, they ought to work and they ought to become part of America and have an American sponsor who takes care of them if they can't find a job. But we have a lot of poor, a lot of homeless, a lot of people that we need to take care of who are already in our country. We borrow $1 million a minute, so we just can't take care of everybody. But I think primarily here there's a national security risk that needs to be addressed.
You released your Obamacare replacement plan today. What would it do with those who now have health insurance because of the Medicaid expansion through Obamacare?
Well, most of the people that have gotten any kind of health care under Obamacare have been through Medicaid. But what they did was some dishonest accounting. They said, oh, the federal government will pay for it, the states don't have to. But in the past, really, the states have been a primary funder of it. And since states don't have a printing press, they have to make decisions based on how much money they have. But Obama came in as Santa Claus and said, it's free, it's manna from heaven, here you can have all this federal government money, but there is no money up here. So I think we have to be humanitarian, we have to have a heart, we have to try to help our fellow man, but just borrowing more money from China to do it doesn't work. we do have to live within our means at the same time. So I think that any kind of Medicaid expansion, the states should say, you know what, if we're going to do this, we're going to have to raise taxes on everybody who lives in the state and not act as if it's going to be free and we're just going to get it from Washington. There is no money in Washington.
All right, Senator Rand Paul, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you on, sir.
Thanks, Jake.